Hello, Barbara. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you. It's lovely to be here with you.
So, introduce yourself
Oh,
then, Barbara. We're going
oh,
to talk about embodied spirituality, which I'm really looking forward to. But let us get to know you a little bit as a Quaker, first of all. What's been your journey into Quakers and how long has that been?
well, that's been a while. I had a number of life experiences, you might say, good and bad, that I ended up as a single mother graduate student with two children, and I was living in a Midwestern university town, um, kind of feeling a little lost. And I found the Quakers. I felt like I needed a spiritual home for me and my little family. And I found the Quakers. And at this meeting, there was quite a lively gay group. This was in the 80s, so quite a while ago now. And there was a lot of discussion at the time about gay marriage and would the meeting itself um, perform, or provide a permit gay marriages. And around that discussion took probably at least a year. And I would myself was feeling a little bit lost in terms of not understanding much about relationships. I was feeling what I used to say sort of sexually disenfranchised.
Mm.
And And so this discussion around gay marriage really taught me a lot. People spoke about what it meant to be in a relationship, what it meant to be loving to a partner. I mean, it was like an amazing experience and one of the deepest things I've had. I used to hang out with a group that was, LGBTQ group. Um, and that would meet every month or so. And I had some really deep worship in that setting. And in one of those at one of those times, I had kind of a vision of this pit of despair. I know this sounds rather
Yeah.
dark, but and I looked into the pit of despair and I could just see everybody in there, old people, young people, men, women, non-binary, children, whatever. Everybody was in there. And I guess that was really a life-changing experience for me because I understood that yes, even though it may not seem so, men do suffer. Everyone has feelings and everyone suffers. And so it was quite I would say, a landmark in my life. And then shortly thereafter, I met my life partner and I announced to the group, I said, "Oh, I've met somebody. I think I'm in love, and it's a man." And so that was, I got married shortly thereafter. So my early experience with friends was really life-changing in terms of getting over, the numbness that can occur after you've been in a bad relationship. Um, but I would say overall, my conversion or my convincement was quite intellectual and uh, based on reading, the testimonies. Oh, yes, I can accept that. Really, I was one of those people who I was probably a Quaker my whole life. I just had to discover,
Mm.
the setting for my people. And but it wasn't until later during the pandemic, years, decades later, that I came across the actual belief system of early friends that was very embodied. And that's where my ideas of embodied spirituality come from studies of early friends like Michelle Tarter's work, which is just awesome. And they use words like incarnational, Christo-presentism, celestial inhabitation. They're quite exotic words to
Yeah.
describe this. And I mean, it's like Quaker Christianity means that spirit or the light of Christ actually can inhabit um, your body in a way that's hard to describe. Um, so is that enough to
Well,
start with?
yeah, I mean, it's just so interesting. I mean, those terms that you just mentioned there and that woman's name, I mean, I've never heard of any of this stuff, and I have read quite a lot myself. Um, I was just struck though, before we get into that, I was just struck by how you talked about relationships there. And um, I remember going to some kind of Woodbrook course about 10 years ago, and it was about relationships, but it was about, I don't know, preparation for marriage or something like that, it was called. And it was a very small group. There weren't many couples there. And all of us were what you've just described, what you might call second relationships, remarriage. And it was so interesting to me that the Woodbrook tutors were a bit flummoxed by that and couldn't really get their heads around it. Like it was run by people who were in their first and only marriages, which is lovely. And there's a very powerful experience, I think, of what you've just described, which I've been through too, of going through all of that despair and heartbreak and the breaking up of what you think is something so foundational, but yet turns out to be quite destructive or not helpful anyway. And then finding a way out of that. It really is a kind of a I don't know, like a religious experience almost in the story of kind of, a descent into some kind of hell and then a journey out of it. But it was really interesting to me that Quakers didn't really or the course anyway, didn't really have anything to say about that. And it still
Oh,
doesn't, I don't think.
that's interesting. Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say my relationship with my now husband, um, I was one of the first experiences I had of spirit telling me to go forward and not be afraid to take the leap because I felt utterly confident in this relationship. And, we're still together, you know, 37 years later, something like that. So it was just a real positive thing
Mm.
as a new Quaker to experience.
Yeah, yeah. And so this idea of embodied spirituality, I mean we've started talking actually about something I think perhaps we hadn't thought we were going to talk about in terms of relationships and well I suppose we're talking about loving lifelong sexual relationships as well. Um but of course we also thought we were going to talk more about body image, and I know that's been a part of your thinking and your kind of spiritual development, if you like. And I've been very much heartbroken, really, by some of the stories we've heard about dysmorphia or gender dysphoria, and the way in which people then feel impelled to modify their bodies, which it just breaks my heart, even when I hear people talk about it in a very positive way for themselves. It affects me so deeply. And then I think another issue you were going to talk about was kind of food and eating and all of these different ways in which our bodies are a big part of our spiritual lives.
Sure. Well, definitely let's head on into those topics.
Yeah.
And the way that I do that is I kind of turn the idea of embodied spirituality around and I talk about spiritual embodiment. So, in other words, how does spirit affect the way you view or treat, care for, love your own body? And early friends were concerned about that. I mean, there's that famous Fox quote about, your carriage and life, will be an example to others and, walk cheerfully around the world. Well, you need to be able to walk in order to walk cheerfully. How did early friends let their life speak? And so I guess I could start by talking about two examples that I know of that are relevant here. The first example extreme spiritual embodiment is James Naylor, of course, who, you know, really, I mean, it's everyone, there's a lot of conjecture about what was going on in his mind when he did that performance in Bristol. Um, but he and a lot of the people around him apparently believed that, Christopresentism meant that, that in a sense they were Christ. They had Christ in them. And so that led them to do these extreme acts of testimony, or I don't know what you would call it exactly. Fasting, from fasting to running around without clothes on, going naked for a sign, I guess is the name for that. The other really extreme example of spiritual embodiment is Public Universal Friend, who's later from around 1776, which is obviously a year that sticks in my brain. And Public Universal Friend is started out as a woman from a Quaker family, and she got very ill, and she said that she died and was reanimated as the, what's the word? Ta Tabernacle or sanctuary of spirit. And she was neither, sorry, I should start switching to they. They were neither male nor female, and they wore androgynous clothing. And that, I mean, there's something about that that rings really true to me because there are a lot of people who have very deep spiritual experiences linked to illness and recovery. And I think that, to me, that says a lot about our embodiment and how that's related to our spiritual beliefs. We can talk a little bit more about Public Universal Friend too, because of course that brings up the idea of the sort of non-binary nature that people believe that they have. But in my case, I had a much more modest idea. I mean, Public Universal Friend one basically was foretelling the second coming of Christ, which was it's really kind of a not very Quakerly idea, since Quakers believed that Christ had already come back. That's why they say Christ had come to teach his people himself. So
Mhm.
my more modest idea was just to look at how Quaker spiritual embodiment would affect the addictions, compulsive eating behaviors like binging, purging, anorexia, and related issues of body functionality and health span. And this all comes from my own lived experience as somebody who's, gained weight, lost weight, gotten older. I'm facing reduced functionality myself at this age.
Yeah.
Um, but I'll just say that because there are some really controversial aspects of this study, I focus on body acceptance and positivity, but a lot of friends can't really separate my point of view from my emphasis on functionality and health span from the ideas of fat shaming and body loathing, which is not at all what I'm into. Um, and the other side is from the right wing com emphasis on purity culture. Like I'm keeping my body pure from a sexual perspective. So my perspective is not at all about ideal thinness or ideal fitness or purity or anything like that. Um, so I stop there and let you say something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it really is so multifaceted, isn't it? And I suppose it's because our bodies do so many things.
Yes.
There's so many sides to this. Um, well, why don't we start with you? You talked about your lived experience. I mean, that's always a really good place to start. I mean, why is it that you've become interested in this? And what is it about your lived experience? Because then maybe I can talk about some of mine, and that might be a good starting point for us.
Sure. Um, so I've found myself in a very sedentary job, and I had a lot of sort of emotional issues, you might say. Uh, and I never learned, I come from a family of people who love to eat. And I never learned to moderate myself. I never got a stop button, you know.
Right.
And so my response to emotion, if I'm happy, oh, let's celebrate with food. If I'm sad, oh, I'm going to have some food to comfort myself. Anyway, I had gotten pretty, uh, I was a pretty weighty friend, you might say.
Yeah.
And it was starting to affect my health.
Right.
And I, my mobility, my functionality. Um, I had an experience in meeting, I had this experience several times, but I forgot. This is the trick that your brain plays on you. I had received a message during meeting for worship for myself, and it was from Spirit, I believe. I love you, and I want you to live a long life so that you can love others. And then I was like, oh, I need to lose weight, blah, blah, blah. But then I forgot about that, you know. So I got the same message several years later. And that time I took it really seriously and I really changed my lifestyle drastically to to have a healthier life. And I initially lost quite a bit of weight, but now unfortunately I'm slowly putting it back on. So I'm not at all an example of extreme fitness.
No, no. Well,
So,
we don't have to be complete paragons of virtue. We don't have to get it all right to
oh
still
no,
learn a lot
absolutely not.
and
And it's changed my
still.
perspective. Yeah, I'm not fat phobic at all. And in fact, I believe that I have what I would call a healthy ideal body.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And the
yeah.
healthy ideal body is the way my body looks when I'm doing um, things that are necessary to maximize my physical health and mental health and overall quality of life within, my parameters. I'm 70, almost 74. I have chronic arthritis. I have a lot of body pain. My feet hurt. So those are the parameters I'm dealing with. I'm also, there are a lot of genetic factors as well, because I'm actually one of the slim people in my family. So
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah. So tell us a bit about then your approach, because obviously we're talking about here how does our religious life and our spiritual life help guide these processes so that they unfold perhaps rather than, I don't know, did you follow government advice on what to eat or did you follow an exercise regime from a particular philosophy? What was it? Was it more practical or was it more spiritual?
well, it was both. First of all, the practical side was my husband and I happened to move to a neighborhood where we could give up using our car all the time. We didn't have to drive all the time, so we could use public transportation and walk and bicycle. And that made a huge difference. I
Hmm.
mean, just huge. I cannot tell you how different it is to give up your car bubble and be in the streets. It's amazing. Anyway, it's also had a spiritual side because I actually got a lot of help from a 12-step program, Overeaters Anonymous.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
12 steps, I don't know how familiar you are, but that is such an embodied spiritual approach to addictions and, compulsive behaviors, etc. So I got a lot of help from understanding and working with that program and working with people in that program. Um, but then I looked around and I'm like, what do we have in Quakerism? What do we have for people like me within our faith? And I started putting together what I thought were helpful materials for people, for Quakers. Uh, And that kind of started off my experience. I gave a workshop at FGC for a couple of years and um, kind of prepared a manuscript for publication that ended up not getting published. I think because that the topic is uncomfortable for people.
It is.
Yeah. So basically what I say right now is, I'm really talking to people who see a connection between spirit, testimony, and what we choose for our bodies. And I'm not talking to you if you are happy with your body right now and you're happy with your potential health span. That's fine. Do what you're doing. If you're lucky enough to buy a prescription for Ozempic, I'm not talking to you. I mean, this is not for you. This is not for you. This is for somebody who really believes that spirit, testimony, that have something to say about what we choose. And I'll say another thing that is, I also tried, what do they call that? Intuitive eating. I don't know if you've heard of intuitive
No,
eating.
no.
It really is a very common sense point of view of, eat when you're hungry, don't eat when you're not hungry. Basically, choose relatively healthy food. I mean, it's very intuitive, but the problem with that I had was that I did not have good food intuitions.
Okay.
My intuition said, keep eating. This tastes good. Sit on the couch. It feels better to sit on the couch. That my intuitions are totally screwed up.
Right.
So I really needed what I made up some queries, advices and queries for my situation. And that was a really helpful exercise to make up the queries and then to ponder the queries every once in a while. Because we're fighting a losing battle. I'll just say one more thing, then I'll stop. Our whole, at least in the States here, our whole food industry, they deliberately create foods that are high in calorie, taste good, very addictive. They know that humans are addicted to salt or can get addicted to salt, sugar, and fat. And that's what they put in the processed foods.
Mm.
And then, in addition to that, many of our pastimes and our jobs are sedentary. So we have to kind of uh, face the fact that a lot of our culture is against um, ha having a healthy, having a long health span. Health span is the span of time that you are reasonably healthy in your body,
Mm. Mm.
as opposed to lifespan.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, any
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm still a little bit shocked that you said you've written something and a manuscript sounds long and with a lot of work gone into it, and you haven't been able to find somewhere that would publish that. I'm assuming in Quaker circles you tried to.
in Quaker circles. Yeah, I mean my manuscript is basically designed for Quakers, so it's
Yeah.
not anything that would be of much help outside of Quaker circles.
Sure.
But to be honest, I have published a lot from that manuscript. I mean, a lot of the work that I've been publishing in Western Friend or Friends Journal has come basically from the manuscript. So it wasn't a lost effort. But
No.
the problem is that this topic is just so controversial. I mean, you wouldn't think so. You wouldn't think so.
I really
But
wouldn't think so, you know. I mean, I really wouldn't think so because health and happiness and confidence and liveliness, it's all just so important. I mean, really speaks to me what you just said about walk cheerfully over the world. Well, you've really got to be without pain and without distress, and you've maybe gone through periods of despair or difficulty or pain, but you've found a way to get back into your groove after that, and that's just
mhm.
crucial. I mean, I don't think I could do everything that I do if I wasn't in such good shape, really, you know? And I feel great, and I'm sat here with no pain, and That's not because I've never had pain. I've had pain this
Yeah,
week, but there's certain things that I do, yoga and massage and whatever, and walking. And so, but it's also like the emotional and the spiritual side, isn't it? Um,
definitely.
and there's just a sadness for me around people feeling this is a difficult issue or a controversial issue. Because for me, it's about not only self-love, but God's love for us.
Yeah.
It really
Yeah.
is.
That's the fundamental, the whole basis is the commandment, love your neighbors as yourself. In other words, love yourself.
Yeah.
First and foremost, you cannot love your neighbor as yourself if you don't love yourself first.
Yeah.
And with, I know that people who have body image issues, it's hard for them to say, I love my body. But if you can at least say, I accept my body,
Exactly.
that's where I'm at because like I said, I have a lot of chronic pain. It's hard for me to walk. And I don't always love my body, but I accept my body. My body has gotten me this far to in my life. So I accept it. But a lot of, let's say, there's a lot of focus on what is called the health at any size movement.
Right. Right.
And and there's it does make a lot of very good points about the social, economic, political, genetic factors involved in health and weight. And that's so true, so completely true. But what I have my criticism is that it's not a concept that ages well. I mean, in other words, people might hate me. I might have haters, but I have to say, from my own experience, it's really okay when you're overweight. Let's say you weigh 300 pounds and you're 30 years old. You can be very healthy. You can be very active. But if you weigh 300 pounds, and that's not really an exaggeration, if you weigh 300 pounds and you're 60, man, you're starting to feel it. Your
Yeah.
feet, your feet feel it, your legs feel it, your knees feel it, your heart feels it.
Mm.
So health at any size doesn't age very well. It's also not spiritual. It's not a spiritual program at all. Um, so yes, there are a lot of complicated genetic, social, political, economic factors involved, but the individual is also a factor. And that's what the health at any size movement kind of minimizes.
Mm.
There's a spiritual connection between the individual change and societal change. They must go together. And if you have time for a quote, I did get a quote thinking that this topic might come up. And this
Okay.
quote is from Lloyd Lee Wilson. Lloyd, I don't know if you're familiar with him.
No.
He is a very well-known conservative friend, conservative meaning conservative Christian friend in the United States. And he says this, which really resonates with me. God's grace and love acting in our hearts is the necessary first motion which makes all other change possible. We act and talk these days as if simply removing social injustice and poverty would bring about a golden age of humankind. If it were possible with a magic wand to end all social injustice and poverty overnight, within a generation, all the present ills of the world would have been reproduced
Yeah.
because the true problems are in the hearts of human beings, not in their surroundings. Anyway, that's the spiritual connection I see. And that's, so for all I admire the health at any size movement for what they've done for people who are struggling with these issues. I do have those criticisms.
Yeah. And I mean, this isn't such a big movement in Britain at all, I would say. But nonetheless, I can see where you're coming from with that. And I think anything around, being kind to yourself, if you like. I'm assuming that that kind of positivity movement is really saying don't beat yourself up.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Um,
definitely.
and be kind and be loving towards yourself, and then take some steps towards something different.
Right. I don't see any contradiction at all between loving and accepting your body as it currently is and saying, but I want to be more functional. I want to be able to walk more than a mile.
Yeah.
I want to be able to fit in an airplane seat. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't see, so I see a lot of positives in the health at any size type movement. But I also think that it doesn't contradict you yourself deciding that you want to make some changes
Mm.
for a more functional, a more better quality life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Getting social isolation is a huge problem in the United States, loneliness.
Mm.
Why? Because a lot of people are simply unable to get out of their houses and get around and get into a social setting.
Gosh, yeah. I mean, it comes up in my prison group a lot, you know. So I mean, obviously I work with men a lot at the moment in this prison work, and it tends more to be addiction issues and drug addictions and alcohol
Mm.
addictions. Um, but there's also often some elements of relationships with women that then they get into real kind of a mess with, you know. But these are the kinds of issues that they're trying to break free from. And I
Yeah,
know that the 12 steps really have a massive, massive role to play. And it's partly that social situation in which you can, you know, recognize your problems and begin a new path. But I'm of the same mind as you, saying that within Quakers we really don't do much practical. We certainly do anything, we don't do anything step by step to help people walk cheerfully.
yeah,
And
yeah,
this notion of loving yourself first, I remember saying about this for years and years and years. Very early on in my Quaker journey, if you like, I realized that I think this is a unique problem in Quakers, or I don't know how unique it is, but it's certainly something I experience a lot in Quakers. I can remember having these conversations. You love everyone else, but are you loving yourselves? And
yeah,
it's a strange, you might in other communities and other groups of people, like for example, my prisoners, you might see that they're much more selfish, perhaps, and that's one of the roots of their issues. But then I turn to my Quaker friends and I think actually we're so giving to other people. There's perhaps a lack of focus on loving ourselves. And it's very dangerous actually. It's very there's something disconnecting about it
yeah.
from a spiritual perspective, which I think is not good. In you know, we need to gently warn people really to that it's a great danger somehow.
Yeah, I agree. And another thing that I think gets minimized is I, I think I'll speak here for American friends. There's a belief that we are all really liberated. We like women don't have body image issues, or women don't have, men are not patriarchal. I mean, we have we have this image of ourselves as it's hard it's hard to it's hard to bring up, let's say, um, counter examples where where we are not helpful to people who are struggling, because I don't know, people are ashamed. I know there was an article in the Friends Journal that somebody had done a study, and one of the main reasons people don't seek help in their meetings is because they're ashamed. They have an addiction, they're ashamed of it, they don't want to admit it. It's not Quakerly, you know. Um,
Yeah.
so So yeah, what does that leave us if we can't talk about it?
Yeah, indeed. And that's I think the perfectionism really and our failure to really acknowledge our own shadow. I mean, that's one of the things that keeps coming up time and time again in the way I talk about these things. You know, we seem to be worried about talking about our own causes of anger or shame or whatever it might be, really. I was wondering if we can come back to this notion of what is it then that empowers us to change? Because, we started talking about relationships and how our personal relationships, and perhaps especially if we've got one intimate, very powerful relationship in our lives, it's so transformative to allow us to change. And I suppose it's not just the human relationship then it's also a spiritual relationship with God that is empowering. And for people who are perhaps, I don't know, non-theists, and also people who are single, this must be so much more challenging. I can't imagine how atheists manage to do this. How do you love yourself if you're not in relationship with the divine, you know?
Well, there are 12-step groups for atheists, but I think they're few and far between because the strength of the 12-step program is that there is some kind of a higher power involved. And people define their higher power in a lot of very odd ways. I personally think that the light of Christ within is the best higher power for any, 12-step program because it is so embodied. I mean,
Mm,
it's like um, you're the early friends believed that celestial inhabitation changed you back to, I mean, this is all their metaphors, so pardon me, I don't mean to step on any toes. That if you truly believed that the Spirit of Christ had come into you, you were being changed back to how you were or how people were before the fall. So before this whole weird story about Adam and Eve, which I have my own thoughts on, um, literally, the Spirit was coming in you and making you new, taking away all of those mistakes and problems. Now, obviously, that doesn't take away from the work. If you're addicted to alcohol, you still need to stop drinking.
mm,
If you're addicted to some kind of drug, you need to stop taking it. But the power of that, I think, is what got me. And I had a few experiences like feeling that. And, one of them, I think we already talked about, or I mentioned it elsewhere, was reading the Bible verse from Revelation 3:20, where I believe the light of Christ is saying, lo, I am standing outside the door knocking. If you hear me and open the door, I will come in and eat with you and you with me. And I'm like suddenly felt infused with this Christ power. Didn't last very long, unfortunately. But I think having experiences like that
yeah,
tell us that our body is really in some way sacred.
yeah,
It is our experience on life. It's how in life, it's on earth. It's how we experience things. And the more you see your body as in some weird way sacred or special or holy or valuable, um, the more you're going to care for yourself, I
yeah,
think, in very specific ways, like yoga, massage, walking, having friends, groups of being in groups, all of those things that are so positive for our life, going to meeting for worship, etc. All of those things.
yeah.
I kind of got off the track, sorry. But
No, it's not off the
the-
track, is it? Because our bodies are sacred and, we are sacred, each one of us. If you, I don't think it's possible to have a life of faith and not believe that this amazing gift is in a a body that exists. I mean, and people find that so easy to love, for example, their dogs and their cats and their children, and much less, for some reason, much less willing to love ourselves.
Yeah.
I mean, my own lived experience, I won't go into in much detail, but it's around the gender dysphoria, and really kind of that. It's not, I don't know if it's even quite body image, but there's just a feeling that it's just not right. But for me, the way through that has always been this sacredness. I wouldn't dare touch it. I wouldn't be so disrespectful to God to I mean, even to strike myself, leave alone do anything more permanent. I wouldn't dye my hair. Like, I just find it deeply upsetting when people feel very, very turning that anger and I would say it's a violent act upon themselves. Um, and I do think, based on what you just said now about the social and political context, I think the pharmaceutical industry and the cosmetic industry and all these kinds of things. I mean, there's money in this.
Yes, definitely.
Prey
Money.
upon people's worries, and this is why I really want all Quakers to realize there's a spiritual answer to this that does not involve big pharma, and it's
Well,
just heartbreaking.
yeah, I mean, I can't really speak from my own experience about gender dysphoria. Um, I would say that self-love, if people are making changes in their bodies truly for because spirit, they are being led by spirit to be to a more loving situation. I
Mm,
mean, I can't really speak to that, but if that seems kind of okay to me. But
mm,
if people are having surgeries or taking medication out of some kind of self-hate, then I don't know. I guess I would like to understand that a little bit better. Now, so here's where public universal friend comes in to a certain extent. I mean, I don't know a lot about the situation. I would need to do a lot more reading. But my understanding is that they had this experience of dying, of death, and being reanimated by spirit in the same body. I mean, same physical body, but they felt no longer male or female. They felt, I guess, non-binary is the word.
mhm,
They started wearing androgynous clothing. So it wasn't a case of sort of female to male. It was more female to non-binary to wearing androgynous clothing. But the thing that was really striking to me was that they believed that their body was literally a vessel for spirit, that spirit had come in and taken over, inhabited their body.
mm,
And I hope that with this inhabitation, this incarnation, I hope that it came along with a feeling of love and acceptance for their body as it was, you know.
mm.
But I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
people in 1776 didn't think about the things that we think about.
Well, they didn't have all of the pharmaceutical industry to, it's a completely different context, isn't it? I mean, I have always worn androgynous clothes. I have always felt neither male nor female. So that's just part of who I am and how I always have been. And what's interesting to me is that in my 50s now, I'm less concerned with it all than ever before. It's just stopped being anything of any interest to me. I can't even be bothered talking about it much. But nonetheless, there's there's nothing about me that would be dressed in a feminine way. Like that,
Yeah.
it's just not possible for me, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Do
so
you? Okay, here's a question for you. Do you feel like you're a vessel for spirit?
well, yes, and I think, but I think we all are. I mean, no more than anyone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
No more than anyone else. So I think, and I think that is what walking cheerfully over the world is. Walk like what is cheerful, full of cheer, you know, full. And what is that? Well, there's no room for any of this angsting about, you know, whatever body part we might be concerned with. It's so trivial and petty that it's not cheerful. It's cheer a little bit full, but these little bits are being complained about. Well, that's not cheerful. So to that extent, I do see it in a very much a spiritual way. And I suppose, like you were saying about, you know, the individual does in the end have to make decisions and has to make a choice, no matter that there's a lot of pressure from, or opportunity, shall we say, marketing opportunities from various industries. You still have to be able to replace or to fight off that temptation with being filled with something else. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, I'm struck by what you said about if surgeries are done out of self-love. Um,
I
I,
well,
I don't think it's possible. So I I really struggle with even the thought that that exists. Um,
I mean, let's say people, let's go, I have to go back to something I'm more familiar with.
sure.
People who are in 12-step programs for, or like Overeaters Anonymous really disparage medical solutions like bariatric surgery
Oh yeah.
or Ozempic because they emphasize the spiritual nature. Even if their body stays the same, they feel free of compulsions. And that's how I feel. You know, my body, I'm still overweight. I'm still, you know, I still struggle with that not having a stop button, but I I feel like I'm free of compulsive eating behaviors and addictions to food, um, without a medical solution. You know what I mean?
Mm,
So I can see your point is that sort of same rather conservative in a good way, I think. Conservative point of view of a spiritual, looking for a spiritual solution as opposed to a medical solution.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I don't unfortunately have a good answer. I
No, well, we're only
my only
thinking.
query would be for someone, are you acting out of self-love? Are you acting feeling like you're a container for spirit? Would you be a better container for spirit if you had a different body in terms of gender?
Mm,
I don't believe that being thin makes me a better person. I don't think that, you know, uh, I feel more attuned to spirit if I'm not compulsively
mm.
eating.
Well, this is
But
your cross to bear, isn't it? Is one way of putting it.
yeah, yeah.
This is the way God has made you, and it has formed your personality and your character, and it is your challenge in life and your cross to bear, and you're doing well with it, you know, and
Well,
you've picked it up and you've carried it.
yeah, and I haven't been tempted to look for a medical solution, but I can't really speak about
No.
people who do. And I do think that the question that they would have to ask themselves, the query for themselves, is whether this is coming from a place of love or a place of hate, a
Yeah.
place of loathing, and to try to get to the point where it's coming from love. And I have read memoirs from people who have transitioned, where it's obvious that it's coming from love, from how someone didn't feel um, right, as you say, in their body, and they can look for ways to feel better about how they are in their body. I don't know if that goes as far as medical or not. I
Mm.
do love seeing how people express themselves in their clothing and their appearance. I think that's awesome about our time. Hopefully, that'll continue into the future.
There's an
But
infinite variety, it seems, isn't there?
the variety of people, for example, that you see at Friends General Conference, you see, and it's amazing. It's
Yeah.
just a loving, amazing conglomeration of people.
You see, one of the things that I suppose I mean I was at friend's house in London about 10 years ago now, maybe longer, 15 years ago, and there was a cosmetic surgeons conference taking place there with all of these shiny magazines of how you could get the new better you. And this kind of thing doesn't generally bother me. But the fact that it was in friend's house and it was related to, be the new better you, in
Oh,
how
yeah.
that is. I, what bothers me about that spiritually is that I I have a strong reaction to a church giving the message that these are the people that go to these surgeons will help you, as opposed to our elders, come to our elders, come for spiritual teaching. So I suppose we don't have conservative friends in the UK, so it's not so much a tradition that we have a lot of mixing with. But I must be on the more conservative friends' way of thinking about this. I have a revulsion, really. I think is it's as strong as that cosmetic surgery will ever be, um, a solution. But yeah,
Oh, I agree with you on that score. Definitely. I mean, that's just part of the whole social pressure to be thin, be fit, be beautiful. And, if you look at the women in Trump's circle, their their faces are so weird.
are they?
They're all having plastic surgery. They have puffy lips, high cheekbones, perfect hair. I
Yeah.
mean, it's insane. It's just insane.
But
So,
I came to the Los Angeles area, California area, about like 25 years ago, 30 years ago now, when I was about 20. Um, and I don't know where it was, around there somewhere. And I was just in awe of these faces of these women. I couldn't believe it. Why did they think that looked good?
oh,
I,
I know. I know. So, whether I mean, I can't speak to the transition issue,
yeah,
but I definitely feel like when women or men use cosmetic surgery and the idea that it's going to make them happier or make them more, I don't know, better people or happier, that's just not true. That's not true.
well,
And
this is the thing, isn't
it's a
it? The
myth that
happiness.
it's a myth that we're being sold,
Yeah.
get your nose changed for $10,000 and you'll be a better person. Everyone will love you. You'll be successful.
Yeah.
Well, that's just a story that we're being sold because as you say, it all comes down to money and profit.
Yeah.
And
Unfortunately.
as Quakers, I think we need to be able to resist that. And I don't know very many Quakers who've had cosmetic surgery. Or,
Well,
maybe
who
maybe you
knows?
don't know.
Who knows? I mean, I think it comes back to the kindness thing, doesn't it? People, I do get criticized for being unkind. And I think, well, do you know what? I'm around a lot of very despairing, distressed people all the time, and they experience me as kind. Um, so if I don't agree with you on something, maybe it's because I don't think it's kindness that you're doing to yourself.
Hmm.
There's a deeper love than this. You're making life easier for yourself in some ways. I don't deny that, but you're not getting into the deep spiritual issues that would truly free you. And for me, it's a kind of a lack of trust in God, really, as well. But
Mm.
you know, uh, it's for me the kindness thing is shallow. This whole I don't know if it's happening in the States, but there's something about there's this push, be kinder, be kinder. There's something in Quakers at the moment on kinder ground or something. And I think, well, that's what the fundamental message of Christianity has always been, hasn't it? Is love, you know.
Yeah.
Can we get more kind than that? You know?
Yeah, I guess I feel that we need, in my Quaker circles, we need to be able to be more honest in a loving way
Mm,
so that we can trust each other.
yeah,
And I mean, I see that in terms of race and economics and things like that, that we we need to be able to be honest but loving
yeah.
so that we can get to the point where we can trust each other in what we say and do. Um, so kindness, I think, can be the little white lie sort of thing, which
Yeah.
um, gets you through maybe an awkward moment, but it's not doesn't really lead to a healing miracle, which I think needs to happen between people, between friends.
I hope so. I mean, it's that balance of love and truth, isn't it? Take heed, dear friends, to the promptings of love and truth.
Love and truth,
They have to go
definitely.
together.
And I think I don't know any Quaker group or denomination, since I'm familiar with a number of them, that really, I mean, I think everyone accepts this notion that there is an ultimate truth. And some of us consider that the divine or the light of Christ or spirit or light. Um, and that truth means that we should be truthful with each other with love.
Mm.
So, yeah, as you're saying,
We
truth and
find this
love.
hard, don't we?
I'm sorry, what?
We find this so hard.
We think that the little white lie is more loving. Um, but until we get to the point where we can be honest and loving and trust each other to be honest and loving, I think unfortunately we'll stay in the little white lie.
Yeah, yeah. Which I think is a real. I think it's a real shame. I think it's a real shame, and I think one of the things that bothers me again, which is I think is a little white lie, is this notion of euphoria, um, and that I mean it's emotional for me to talk about, so I won't talk about it in too much detail. But in Quakers in Britain at the moment, we heard a statistic a few months ago, but there was what we call meeting for sufferings, and I listened into some of that, and one of the people spoke that young Quakers in Britain today, 50% of them identify as trans.
Mm,
Only 10% identify as heterosexual. And I'm still reeling from that, and it must have been 3 or 4 months ago that I heard it. And there's something about a kind of a false euphoria or false, isn't this amazing? Isn't this cool? And as a person who's lived in gay culture all my life, and back in the 80s and the 90s, it began to be seen as a cool thing. From being a
mm,
horrific thing and an ostracized thing, suddenly it's a really cool thing. And I hate that.
mm.
Really, I
And
really hate that. Um,
do you have, does your National Health Service cover treatment for transitioning?
but not detransitioning.
Okay, so that I think there's a major difference between British friends and American friends. It because you have a national health service and we don't. So
Well,
it
I
do
don't know the detail of I mean, probably I'm wrong on that. There might I know of somebody who I've just released the interview with him, um, whose treatment was paid for on the National Health Service for transitioning, but now that they want to detransition, that's not being, you know, funded. So I don't know the details of it. I'm probably got some of the aspects of that wrong, but I know some aspects of it. That there's long waiting lists, I think. But what do you mean by there's that being a key difference?
well, again, going back to the weight issue, I don't find British women, I mean, mainly chat with women on this topic.
Yeah.
Um, or I should say, people who identify as women or something like that. I mean, I'm not even sure what that
Okay. Okay.
demographic is,
Okay.
but uh, it's an issue for American women because so much is not covered by health insurance. And so
Right.
you really have no recourse. But British women, when I talk to them, they seem completely unconcerned. And I think it's because there is um,
I see.
that backup with the health service.
I see. So a safety net, you mean that as you
A
get older,
safety net.
if
That's
you
a
do have
perfect
health
word.
issues, you'd be able to be
Right,
supported with that. Yeah. Yeah.
right. Whereas here in the States, because there's no health safety net or very little health safety net, I do think that women are not necessarily more successful at keeping a healthy body,
Mm.
but I think they worry about it more. I think it's more of a topic of concern than it is in the UK, as far as I can tell. I
Yeah.
could be totally wrong.
Well, I take your point. I think that is a true thing. That's something that's in the context of how we live. But I still think if we come back to thinking about what Quakers do and how, for example, we don't have much teaching ministry. We don't even teach people how to center down into meeting for worship, leave alone anything else. But I'm really interested in what you say that you've written some advices and queries, because it sounds to me like that's part of the answer that I'm seeking, in that if we are to raise this idea of an embodied spirituality or spiritual embodiment, that there are things that we can do to encourage and to enlighten and empower and to help people dwell in this spirit and be infused by it and, like I say, be full of cheer, which is health giving. So there is a this they're just so entwined.
Mhm.
So what are your ideas then for how Quakers might support and develop this embodied spirituality?
Well, I keep talking about it. I think it's an idea that's catching on slowly. Um, I know I've identified a few other people who seem to have an embodied approach. Craig Barnett is one, and Michelle Tarter. I will send you her article. I think it's a good read.
Okay.
Um, uh, so I am trying to kind of slowly, by doing these podcasts and publishing articles,
But tell me
try.
a bit about what does it mean in practice then? Because you've mentioned some advices and queries, but do you, is this the meeting for worship for dance idea, or is it about yoga practices that don't call them yoga, or what does it look like?
Well, I think it's all of those things. It's, maintaining an active lifestyle within the parameters that are available to you. I have gone to some of the meeting for worship for dance online, and it's amazing to see. I saw there was a woman who was in a hospital bed, and she was like dancing with her hands. And I thought, that is so embodied, and it's not, other people were of course getting up and moving around, and to everyone was moving to the capability of their body, you
Yeah.
know and it was awesome. So yeah, all of those, I really encourage all of those experiences, different ways to worship, walking, meditation. It has a lot to do with my work on Lexio Divina, which I view as trying to learn something so well that it becomes part of your being, through walking. I did a pilgrimage I mean, that was when I could still walk pretty well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know, since it's a topic that I think most Quakers are not very interested in, from what I can tell, I'm doing my best to chip
Well,
away.
exactly. And I mean, as you were speaking, I was just thinking about it. It's moving, isn't it? I mean, you started off by saying you and your husband moved, and then in that new location, you lived a different life. And I mean, I'm going to go on retreat again quite soon, and it's out on an island, so you physically have to get on the boat and cross this quite a rough patch of sea, and it's just feels a real physical experience. And
Yes.
and of course, moving comes from emotion, this feeling and it's moving. And we don't have as much of that in Quakers. Certainly, we're a bit in
No,
Britain,
and
we've
in
got the
meeting
stiff
for
upper
worship,
lip.
in the past, if you read descriptions of meeting for worship in back in the old days, people were singing and, it seemed like people were, sermonizing and moving and standing up. And it was the enthusiasm. There was a lot
Yeah,
of enthusiasm.
yeah,
And I think in now our meeting for worship really fetishizes silence
yes,
without letting people know what the silence is supposed to be about. That the silence is just an envelope for your seeking, for your centering, for your prayer, for your vocal ministry. So,
absolutely.
so when we focus, I think there's a very intellectual, cerebral understanding of meeting for worship. And, as you say, I don't know why an atheist would even be there.
No,
Um,
no.
so, but,
Well,
I mean,
except to be open to change. I don't see any other reason why, and I don't know how they would be happy there. But some people say they are. I'm not sure. I haven't really spoken to many people like that. But
well, yeah, my own experience, I started out with I didn't really have any belief system. I was a refugee from a mainstream Christian denomination, and I didn't really have any particular beliefs when I started attending a Quaker meeting. Like I said, I started off with very intellectual agreement. But over time, given my own experience, I've had this revelation,
yeah,
about the connection between the body and spirit.
yeah.
And yeah, I just wish more people would.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's about being open, isn't it? It's being
Yeah,
open and
being open.
it's a dangerous thing to come to a meeting for worship. It should be, and it is. If you come to Quaker meeting regularly, you are in danger of being changed, you know? Yeah.
Yes.
And if you're not open to that and take that risk, that is how it should be, and I absolutely agree with fetishization of silence. It's it doesn't seem to be quite so bad anymore. I'm not sure if I'm just moving in different meetings where there's more ministry, but there's a
Mm,
lot more ministry, I feel, um, which I think is which I think is great.
me too.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Definitely.
really interesting to talk to you here because, as you know, I have just done a whole series of interviews around diversity and inclusion, which is somewhat what we've talked about. Um, but what I've been led to is that I've got another few people who I'm starting to speak to about food issues and farm
Mm,
and veganism. I don't know if you saw, I posted this kind of joke the other day, which has had 1,500 views, which not all Quakers are vegan. And this notion of can we be meat eaters and still have a spiritual life, you know, because I think there's a kind of an unspoken expectation sometimes that the right thing to do is to be vegan, and I'm not vegan.
I'm not vegan either.
No, no. But isn't it interesting how our interview from a few weeks ago got delayed, and now it seems to be that there's new things that I'm being given to talk about uh,
Mm.
around food, you know, what food choices we make and the ethics around that, about its impact on the planet and on society, as well as our bodies, you know. Do you want to say anything about your own food, your own approach to food now as you stand at this age? What have you
Sure.
learned and where are you now?
Um, okay. I am not a vegan. I'm not a vegetarian. I do eat meat. My husband and I eat, I would say, uh, very small portions of fish and chicken and red meat. Um, I think it's partly because both of us have lived overseas a lot in places where it wasn't easy to get different food. And so we've both sort of cultivated this, lifestyle of being able to eat almost anything, not everything, but almost everything. For example, we lived in Mongolia. It's hard to get vegetables there. All the vegetables come from China, unless you're talking about onions and potatoes. They don't really grow in Mongolia. So if you our daughter who was vegetarian, when she came to visit us, it was quite hard to find food for her. And people would give her chicken because they don't really consider chicken a meat. So
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was kind of odd. So yeah, so I really feel like I need to be able to eat anything in moderation. I try to avoid processed food. Um, We do, of course, we're retired. We both like to cook. We cook a lot of our own food. Um, Nothing's really off the table. My husband makes pizza and beer.
mm,
Uh, he makes pizza every week, so every week we have pizza.
yeah, yeah. You know,
Uh, Go
you
ahead.
know, exactly. I mean, that's a very similar approach to how I take it, you know. And one of the things you said something about is in Revelations, where Christ will come and eat with you, with
Oh
us.
yeah,
That's powerful, isn't it?
it is very powerful to me. Yeah, it gave me, I mean, it just put Jesus in a whole different light. And actually, Jesus was accused of being a drunkard and a glutton. That's a kind of a Bible verse that few people know about. Um,
Mm.
but so yeah, I kind of feel like Jesus, well, the man Jesus would be my bestie. We would be eating and drinking together. And the light of Christ, different, is in both of us, you
Yeah,
know. So I kind of go back to that James Naylor idea, of being inhabited just the same way Jesus was inhabited by the light of Christ.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a wonderful note to end on, really. This notion that if we do have troubles, if you like, around or conflicted ideas around food, just to remember that Jesus is with us in that is
Definitely.
it's
Yeah.
life-changing, really, if you want it to be.
Yeah. And I think if people are concerned about that, it is very helpful to go through and make some advices and queries for your own situation. Um, to ask yourself some of the deep questions about why you're eating, why you're drinking, why you're taking drugs, you know, why you may feel like another body would suit you better. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
we're living in very interesting times.
we are. We are. And you know, let's hope that people really feel a loving sense of support and companionship as they face these struggles, because we've all faced struggles of some kind. They just have different faces, but and that's hopefully what Quaker community can do is to provide this loving but truthful, you know,
Oh,
experience.
yes, that would be awesome.
It would. Well, we can only wish and hope that these kinds of conversations will encourage people. Well, thank you so much, Barbara. It's been lovely talking to you.
Oh, yes. Thank you for inviting me. I have really enjoyed this. And,
And
I love your podcast.
and perhaps you can send us any links or any documents that we can put it in the in the description to this video. Maybe you have some links you can provide us to your work if people want to follow it up.
Oh,
That
sure.
great.
I'd be happy to do that.
Great. Well, thank
Okay.
you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.